Do we do a drink toast?
Well, it's probably too early for me.
Marina.
Yes?
You can start.
Perfect. Good morning, all. Thank you very much for joining us from wherever you are. Let me introduce myself. My name is Marina Novelli. I'm Professor of Tourism and International Development at the University of Brighton in the UK. Currently COVID displaced in Italy, but hey ho, life is always a challenge and we make the most of it as we can. Today with me, I've got a great group of people. Obviously my co-editor, Emmanuel Adu Ampong and Manuela Lecter Ribeiro, respectively from Wageningen University and Surrey University. They are both in the Netherlands. Well, Emmanuel is joining from the Netherlands and Manuela Lecter is actually joining from the UK. And then there are a number of other speakers that will be introduced as we move forward. Today, as you all know, we are here to conversate over a recent publication that came out of a fantastic collaboration. The publication is obviously the Routledge Handbook of Tourism in Africa. It came out in November, is widely available both in hard copy and ebook format. And of course, the great pleasure of holding a fairly large volume, as you can see, 510 pages of hard work coming together is a great, great pleasure. The book contains 30 chapters authored by 60 authors in total. And it is my great pleasure to say that after so many years of working in Africa, the collaboration with Dr. Adu Ampong and Dr. Ribeiro, Emmanuel obviously is from Ghana and Emmanuel is from Cape Verde, attracted, thanks to them, we managed to attract a lot of our authors. In fact, the vast majority of authors in this volume from the African continent, which I think is one of the winner factor of this volume. Before I introduce my next speaker, there are a couple of things that I would like to highlight. I know normally we conclude session with thanking people, but I would like to start with some thank you, because I think that this volume is the result, as I said, of a long-lasting collaboration between many of us. But the bottom line is that it would not have been possible without the support of the authors that obviously contributed to it. And also, in a way, in the indirect support that we have always received by organizations like Atlas, in particular Atlas Africa. Atlas is an organization that includes a very large number of institutions globally, but in particular, the fact that they've been operating in the academic world for over 20 years, over 30 years, particularly in challenging times, and providing platforms such as this today to really come together and discuss cutting edge issues to do with Africa and with many other parts of the world where tourism and leisure is certainly an important economic sector. The other organization that I would like to thank is obviously the UN World Tourism Organization. We have Elsia, Grand Co-Director of the Africa region of the organization, giving the opening remarks. And I would like to thank the UNWTO as well, because personally, obviously, I've collaborated with them for a long time on a number of fronts, but particularly what is important for us is to bring organizations that work together, work in industry, such as the UNWTO, and also academia like Atlas, and potentially bring the collaboration and the discussion about how we make tourism better in the future. Now, particularly at this critical time, and in the future, as we move along with trying to forge next generation of professionals in the sector. Travel and tourism is due to come back, and we all are working for making it come back better. This is just a mantra that we keep listening to, but it's actually something we all believe in. And this book in particular provides an overall, I would say, scenario, or indeed of what was pre-COVID, but also a scenario that provides some of the challenges and opportunities that were available pre-COVID and are still available today as we move forward. Of course, with some adjustment to be considered, but of course, one of the things that we must do as academic and practitioners is not to try to reinvent the wheel, but actually make sure that we move forward in a way that is cohesive, coherent, and creative and innovative. So, yeah, of course, I would like to thank Routledge for giving us the opportunity to produce this collection of 30 essays, and of course, reflect on a number of issues from environmental to social to economic across the various regions of the African continent. And just before I move to introducing our opening speaker today, I would like to make a couple of personal points on the experience of being involved in such an important project. The project took almost 3 years to be finalized. We had obviously a number of proposals coming in. We had to select one that could fit within the collection. And of course, we have a mixture of full chapters and in focus contributions provided both by academic and practitioners. And this is what I think is a very important aspect to highlight, because this is in effect reflecting our commitment to forge more collaboration between academia and the practitioner world and the industry, because without that collaboration, we cannot really move forward. And for too long, we've been in a way moving on two parallel kind of silos with very little conversation going on. So, and also, I think one of the things that is really important to mention is that at this time of physical immobility for many of us induced by COVID, there are some good stories and good things coming out of. And I think one of them is the fact that we've been able to collaborate and be engaged and connected despite all the challenges. And I feel that the positive that I can get out of this specific example of collaboration, but also by many others which are obviously ongoing, is the fact that there is a lot of very positive energy to move forward in the right direction and in a way that can potentially bring us all together in the same space, hopefully soon in the future. So with no further ado, I would like to now introduce you to Elsia Grandcourt. Elsia is the director of the Africa region of the UNWTO. And of course, she's got extensive experience, not only in dealing with the academic world through their affiliate membership and their partners in the African continent, but they are down on the ground trying to address issues such as the crisis put forward by the current COVID pandemic. So Elsia, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marina. You can hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah, thank you so much. Allow me to start, first of all, by expressing my warm wishes for the new year to everyone who has joined here today. And it's a year, as Marina also alluded earlier, where we need to continue our efforts, not only in following the guidelines and the protocols to help contain the virus and also help in breaking the chain of transmission. But it is also a year where more than ever before, we need to continue working together to identify solutions to help restart the tourism sector, but also to build consumer confidence. So on behalf of the Secretary General, Zurab Pololikashvili, I would like to express our sincere thanks and appreciation primarily to Professor Novelli, who represents Brighton University, an affiliate member of UNWTO, for the invitation that was extended to us to contribute to this important piece of work by providing significant insights, data, research, and informative content about the status of our industry in the region that was pre-COVID, and that today has translated in the Routledge Handbook of Tourism in Africa. Our sincere thanks also goes to the co-authors and contributors who has helped to realize this project. And at the time that this project was conceived, we had no idea of what was lying ahead of us. You would all recall that there was a positive growth that the tourism sector in Africa was experiencing. International arrivals in Africa had reached 71 million, growing an estimated 4%. Other regions were also doing well. The Middle East, for example, recorded the fastest growth rate among world regions. And based on the economic outlook, as well as the trends in international tourism, international arrivals had forecasted to grow from 3 to 4% in 2020. And in Africa, international arrivals were projected to grow from 3 to 5% in 2020, following the 4% increase that had been recorded the following year in 2019. And all of this was based on the constant gross domestic product growth, the strong demand for travel back then, improvement in digital technologies, and of course, easier visa access. And these positive projections had led to an increasing number of countries across the continent to put a particular emphasis on their tourism sector and thereby mainstreaming tourism in their national agendas as a fundamental pillar to foster the socio-economic development. Unfortunately, as we have all experienced, the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic has provoked some serious and unprecedented consequences on international economies, with extensive and significant impact on tourism, which is one of the most affected sectors where growth and development are currently at a standstill. For the first time also in history, we saw that 100% of all destinations worldwide had introduced travel restrictions with border closures, which further limited movements of travel. And the latest data from our barometer shows that the tourism sector in Africa has undergone a contraction of about minus 69% in terms of international tourist arrivals in the period from January to October 2020, which equals massive loss of jobs, which we have been experiencing, especially for the unskilled workers, especially also the women and youth that are employed in the sector. And even our latest report on travel restrictions that are introduced by member states to curb the effects of the crisis, out of the 27 destinations within our continent, 16 at the time had introduced border closures completely for 4.5 months, whilst the other 22 countries have slowly eased and lifted the travel restrictions for international tourism purposes. But as you are all aware, and as Marina said also in the beginning, there are continuous efforts being made by everyone in the sector that are concerned with the recovery of the tourism sector. And we believe that it's collaborative efforts such as has been done on this project that will help us tremendously in understanding the new dynamics that are emerging with this pandemic that we need to focus on for the sustainable development of the sector. Whilst the urgent need is to find solutions to the current situation, we must not neglect the importance that research will do to help us plan for the future And again, I believe that the work that has been accomplished here on this project may very well serve as a springboard as we now address the new issues and the new challenges that has been brought by the pandemic. As some of you may be aware, we had identified 10 key priority areas outlined in our UNWTO Agenda for Africa, Tourism for Inclusive Growth, to which we have elaborated on the chapter in this book. But however, in the light of the renewed and transformed global context, which the pandemic has brought, we have been forced to rethink and to readapt our strategy. And that is why last year we also launched a survey amongst our members to get a better sense and deeper understanding of what are the key areas of intervention that we need to keep our focus on in order to support and accelerate the recovery process of the tourism sector. And it is interesting, I want to share this here because I know there's a lot of academias listening in, especially when we talk about areas of research that needs to be focused on. The 5 main priorities that the members highlighted that was still relevant for them included unlocking growth through investment, promotion, and public-private partnerships, promoting innovation and technology, promoting travel facilitation, everything that is related to connectivity as well as visa facilitation, fostering resilience related to safety and the security aspect in the tourism sector, as well as advocating Brand Africa. And I'm sure a lot of you has been following from the outset the leadership role that our Secretary General had taken last year when the pandemic was declared. There's a number of guidelines as well as recommendations, which I will ask my colleague Aldo maybe to just put in the links in the chat so that for those of you listening in can better understand the work that has been done and that we are currently doing that you may use as a point of reference in case of need. We didn't stop here. We also went with some very aggressive social media campaign in partnership with CNN. And now currently we're still running a social media campaign, #MyAfrica, inviting people to share positive stories about our tourism sector in Africa. But I want to stress here that we believe strongly in collaborating with academias in order to advance research in the tourism sector. And we continuously committed through this, through the universities that are affiliate member of ours, such as the University of Brighton, and also through the work that is being sorry, I think I was muted, whereby a lot of research work also is being focused on areas whereby we need to relook at how to redynamize our tourism sector. So I would not, I would rather stop here because I know that we're going to hear a lot of exciting and interesting interventions from the contributors of this book. But what I want to highlight here is again to reiterate the importance for us to keep working together, having this joint cooperation and collaboration amongst the key stakeholders from both the public and the private sector, because this is now even more paramount to support the swift recovery of our industry. We need to continue to have this coordinated approach. And I'm very pleased, as Marina mentioned in the beginning, this is a project whereby we took time. She mentioned 3 years, and a lot of contributors that are also familiar with the situation in Africa. So now more and more, we need to use those research work that has been conducted in the past to help us also as we understand the current situation that we are living in. So I will stop here, Marina, and again, I'd like to express our sincere thanks for having involved us in this project. And you know, we are fully committed to continue to support, and we appreciate all the help that we get in order to be able to continue to promote sustainable tourism development in Africa. So I thank you.
Thank you very much, Halcia, for your opening remarks, and of course, renovating your commitment to collaborating with the academic world. Just as a point of highlights here, before I pass it to my colleague Emmanuel, it is important also to highlight the fact that although the project that we are referring to took almost 3 years to come to completion, there is a growing amount of research going on at the moment, which is taking much shorter time to actually be produced. So let's not forget that those of us who have been involved in really monitoring the evolution of the situation can certainly potentially contribute to the narrative and the new debates that will be taking place as we move along. I would like to invite also our audience to post some of your questions or any remarks that we could contribute both on YouTube, and those of you who are on Zoom to do so on in the Zoom chat. I would strongly invite any of you listening to really engage in the conversation, because I believe it is really important that we make this as a live conversation as much as we can. So with no further ado, I would like to pass the conversation to my colleague, Emmanuel, who will be obviously moderating this part of the conversation. And I thank you all once again for joining us.
Okay. Thank you, Marina. And now we get to the phase where we get to hear a bit from the authors themselves about their chapter, but also importantly, how their chapter relates to the current situation with COVID and post-COVID, how the tourism sector will look like. So what kind of lessons they can highlight from their chapter and speak to current issues. But before I do that, I just wanted to highlight one of the things that we are most proud of in this heavy book is the fact that we had great ambitions to try to have representations from different parts of the continent, especially those parts that we hardly hear about when it comes to tourism, whether in articles or whether in books, basically to encourage also early career research is based on the continent, or those from the continent studying outside to contribute and collaborate with others. So we are most pleased that we were able to do that. And so we have coverage from a wide ranging of countries that we don't normally hear of in academic studies on tourism, such as Morocco, Senegal, Cape Verde, Niger, Gabon, Ethiopia, Sao Tome and Principe, Mozambique, and Zimbabwe. We try to also include the Lusophone and Francophone countries that we don't normally hear of in English-speaking literature on tourism. So we are most pleased that we have those chapters represented. But importantly, what we try to do also is to have new storylines, so new narratives and unique stories from the continent when it comes to tourism. And I'd just like to highlight the first part of the book, where basically we take key issues that concerns the continent, and especially within the current COVID era, these will have implications. So we have chapters on ICT, and I think what we've seen during this crisis is the role of ICT. We have stuff around tourism and climate change. How would that happen? Lots of tourism products on the continent is based on foreign that's coming in to safari, also for conservation purposes. But if these streams are cut off, what happens? And we have also issues around air liberalization. There were lots of talks about domestic tourism being the key going forward, but actually on the continent, there is quite a big issue with regards to how easy people can travel from one place to the other and how expensive it is to fly from, say, Ghana to Senegal, because there are no direct flights. And this is due to the bottlenecks with aviation. So these are some of the chapters in the early part. I would like to invite our contributors who are here with us to switch on their cameras so that we can start and hear from them. And we'll try to do it kind of chapter by chapter. For those who are here, do it region by region. So in the first part of the book, which is on Africa and tourism, we have authors who've written on tourism and climate change. And I'd like to invite Vame and also Joseph Mbawe to say something about their chapter and how they think the insights from their chapter speak to current issues going forward.
Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon from Botswana. I will allow Wami to, she's the first author, therefore she should take responsibility to say something. So Wami Hambira, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Like he has just said, my name is Waime Hambira. We co-authored this paper together. His name is Joseph Mbaiwa. So we would like to thank the editors for inviting us to contribute to the book. We think and we agree that the topic that they had invited us for is very important and pertinent. We wrote a chapter on tourism and climate change in Africa. So this is a very topical issue. We know that climate change is a very topical issue. And over the years, research on how it affects tourism has taken momentum. We know that before, people were just interested in knowing how it will affect the agri sector, how it will affect the water sector and so on. But so recently, or in recent years, we have also realized that it also, the tourism sector, especially nature-based tourism, it is vulnerable to climate change. Hence, we were very excited to contribute to this chapter, to this book. So basically, we just looked at what is the focus of tourism climate change research in Africa. We also looked at what are the impacts of climate change on the sector, and also at how what are the responses that are coming up from the stakeholders. So from our results, we realized that in terms of focus on research, there's still a lot of research gaps, especially when you talk about the vulnerability. Not much research has gone into exactly how vulnerable is the tourism sector. And this is very important because before you can come up with any solutions, you want to know to what extent is this industry really vulnerable. And then there were some research also that went into the impacts of climate change on tourism. So most of the research indicated that they focused on expected impacts. Very few of them really looked at the actual impacts on the operations. So that is one of the gaps that researchers can take on to really see how tourism is at the moment impacting on climate change, or on climate change and the other way around. And then this is despite the fact that most of the research, it really showed that indeed the drivers of climate change, such as increased temperatures and floods and precipitation and extreme events, they do affect the tourism sector, but the extent, or there hasn't been so much research that has gone into that, except when we are looking at the perceptions or what are we supposed to expect. So there's so much that we can still look at in that area. So boiling down to what our moderator said in terms of how now it relates to the current issue of COVID, we believe that this is going to be a long time. Climate change is going to be a long-term problem. It's going to be there. Pandemics, we know that they do come and go, but at the same time, they leave impacts that are long-lasting as well. So from the point of view of our chapter, we are saying as we are building back together, or we are looking at COVID-19 recovery plans of building back together, we must also tie these recovery plans to climate action. So they should go hand in hand so that we all achieve sustainable development goals at the end of the day. So that's what I can wrap up in just 1 minute. We're given 1 minute to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And that's very succinct. So we need to build back together with climate adaptation and mitigation in mind. And with that, I'd like to ask and I know Elsie has already spoken, but what has been the role of the UNWTO in tourism and sustainable development in Africa? So I'd like to ask Elsie to respond to that. What will be the role going forward? So if you can summarize, what will be the key role that you think the UNWTO should play in tourism, and also sustainability in terms of, as Wame said, climate adaptation, building in, not just growing, but growing sustainably.
Totally. If you look at our vision and mission also as UNWTO, we say that our core role is obviously to promote the sustainable development of tourism. And this has been very core in the mandate, in our mandate, and in the delivery of the work that we do with our member states. And now more and more we can see that with the new dynamics that is happening, a lot of emphasis is being put on the new practices, whereby be it from building new establishments, whereby making use of the whole entire value chain. When we talk about the circular economy, how we can make use of what is in our natural environment in order to be able to ensure that we do promote tourism in a sustainable manner. And also we are cognizant that going forward, even the consumers are very well versed and very well informed about several practices that they tend to look for when they travel, to ensure that the destination and the establishment where they are going to be enjoying their holiday are really sensitive to these practices. And that is why in the work that we do, we put a lot of emphasis on that. And we've just launched recently, with the support of IFC from the World Bank Group, an initiative that is focusing on green investment. So there are a lot of key areas where we're putting a lot of emphasis, but this remains a very core and central role to us, because it's the way forward. If the stakeholders, the players in the tourism sector, they are not picking up on this, it will not match, because as I said, the consumers themselves, they have a high expectation, and they are looking for such destinations where they know that the tourism sector is being developed in a sustainable manner. And I think this is relevant even in our own daily lives and the practices that we are doing, be it at home or in the community. This is what I can say in a short period of time. We will continue to focus our work in this direction for sure.
Yeah, and I actually, because, well, you had an in focus chapter in the book, and that was on the role of the UNWTO. So we also have an in focus chapter in the book from Kwachi Donko about the growth of meetings, and it will be nice now for Kwachi to tell us about his contribution to the book, but also what has happened to that growth that he wrote about meetings, incentives, conferences, exhibition, and events across the African continent. So Kwachi.
Hit sectors of the global economy is the MICE industry. But
there are some audio issues.
Yeah, I think Kwachi, your video and audio is breaking a bit.
Okay, let me try and reconnect.
Yeah. So we can move to, well, we can move to another chapter, and then when Kwachi comes back, we can pick up from MICE. So I'd like to invite Huda. They wrote a chapter on Understanding the complexity of resident support for cultural heritage preservation in Tunisia. That's chapter 9 on the path on tourism in North Africa. So Huda, how has it been in terms of your chapter? Your mic is off.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, hi everyone. Quickly, in 1 minute, I would like to highlight two remarkable issues here. The first is regarding choosing research, design, and data collection, and how it will be relative after COVID-19. And the second issue is about study contribution. We might face a complex situation like in our study, which is co-authored with Dr. Ribeiro and Dr. Wasnon. So when we face a such unique study and complex, flexibility becomes essential during field work. For example, this study was part of big quantitative data project. During questionnaire distribution and without any purpose, a deep informative conversation raised up the exploratory qualitative study question. So instead of only distributing a quantitative questionnaire and asking just what people or respondent think, we go through why people think. Actually, I was the one who collected the data because I was speaking the language of respondent located in Carthage, North Africa. They speak Arabic and I am originally from Libya, North Africa too. So we have similarities in many perspectives. I was having my daily diary, enjoying getting access through the thoughts and the feeling of the people, questioning doing all these qualitative issues and gaining a qualitative perspective from different level and power instead of just getting numerical data. Really, I am worried after COVID. I'm worried about the future of qualitative interview and qualitative studies because qualitative is about feeling, about thoughts, about contacting people face to face and build a trust between the researcher and the respondent. I'm worried after COVID how we will do this. Maybe once we will say we will do it like now online or by any technical tools. But in my opinion, this will not be replaced by face-to-face effect interview. Other issues I would like to raise in this 1 minute, that our research contribution. Our study, it contributes to the literature by focusing on the influence that social class discrimination can have in support for cultural heritage preservation. Also, we have theory contribution. We are unlike previous studies which focus on resident attitude by utilizing social exchange theory. In our study, we employed equity theory to consider a greater context of the social and historical matter that affect resident support for cultural heritage preservation. Also, I would like to mention another last point to the role of UNWTO, because when I was in the fieldwork, I met several middle managers from UNESCO, the Office of UNESCO in Tunisia, and maybe will be in another separate paper.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Now that's a key point about what happens for data collection post-COVID when you can meet people face to face. Okay. And now, we'll move to chapter 17, which is a country that we don't often hear about when it comes to tourism, Niger. And Sarah was the author of that paper. So Sarah, floor is yours.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Good day, everyone. So I worked on the chapter titled Tourism Development in Niger, Challenges and Opportunities. And this chapter seeks to explore the intricacies of tourism in Niger by looking at the interconnection between peace and tourism, the historical evolution of tourism development, and the constraints and opportunities of tourism in Niger, which, as Emmanuel just mentioned, is a destination which is often overlooked internationally. So I've first explored the origin of the industry in the late 80s and early 90s, beginning with desert expeditions in the north of the country with the Tuareg communities. The industry, however, nearly collapsed due to insecurity waves, which sparked in the mid-90s and affected the country's perception as a whole. I've also addressed the recovery and development strategies as seen by the creation of other tourism products in the country, such as the business tourism or the MICE tourism in the capital, and ecotourism in the south with the W National Park, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and part of the WAP complex, which is the Park W, Arli, and the Penjari, and spans over 3 countries, namely Niger, Benin, and Burkina Faso, and is the largest contiguous region of protected areas in West Africa. The chapter also discusses the opportunities which are very relevant in today's context, as we mentioned, since we know that domestic and intra-regional tourism allow for the tourism industry to stabilize in times of crisis, whether it be of a security crisis or, as we know today, a health crisis. So I hope you will enjoy the chapter, and I look forward to receiving your feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I suppose we might get back to the questions about the state of Niger now and COVID and whether people will be looking to go to Niger. So we'll go to our next contributor. Kwache is back, so maybe we can, it's the time to look at the practitioners, to hear a bit about the practitioners. So if Kwache, you can join us now, then you can tell us about meetings, incentives, conferences, and events, and your contribution to it. And then we can move to Benedict, also as a practitioner on the ground.
Thank you, Emmanuel. I hope it works this time around.
Yeah.
Right. My focus was looking at the value and the growth of the MICE sector. And I generally look at the yield of the industry and its contribution to African economies. And what I picked up was that the MICE sector is the highest yield across the entire tourism value chain in terms of daily revenues and what it brings to every single economy in terms of investment, innovation, and brand or destination branding. And as a result, a lot of countries in Africa have invested heavily in that particular sector to ensure that it become one of the key economic drivers in their economies. And one of them is Rwanda, South Africa, Ghana, Kenya, and countries like Tanzania and the rest are also coming up accordingly. And because of the value of the sector and the fact that the sector was set for growth prior to the COVID-19 era, The member states within most African countries have even come together to form what they call the Coalition of Africa Convention Bureaus, to underscore the significance of the mine sector as a whole to African economies due to the contribution that it's making. On top of that, it also, my session also touches on the efforts that individual sectors within subsectors within the mine sector are making to ensure that the sector becomes more sustainable and make bigger contribution than it was making. And as a result, one of the key sector, we will call it the subsectors, called the convention centers, basically the infrastructure component of it. And a lot of work has been done in Africa, yet again, underscoring the significance of the sector. However, looking at the COVID era, the sector has suffered a lot, and I think we need to look at different ways of moving forward. And looking at it, one important thing we like to underscore is that the in-person interaction will still remain powerful after COVID, hopefully very soon, even though we don't know when it's going to disappear. So what we've been encouraging the industry to look at is to ensure that they still keep in touch with their clients across the world to ensure that when things settle in the near future, they are able to go back to the in-person conferences, which is the bigger generator of revenues. Another important thing that we've also looked at recently is that technology is going to be the key drivers we've seen all over the world. And therefore, all the convention bureaus and destinations must ensure that they're up to scratch, they got the right technology to drive hybrid events, in-person and various remote destination conferences. And another important point that we've also picked up is that the new normal is here. We've been talking about the new normal, and a lot of the current conditions are going to stay, and therefore they have to be embedded in the running of any conference or MICE projects that any Africa destination may want to consider. And that will include ensuring that the COVID protocol that they are putting in place now remain part of their standard operating procedures. And a lot of investment also needs to be invested as far as virtual marketing and virtual communication with delegates and clients are concerned. So in a nutshell, there is a serious paradigm shift that we all have to embark on due to the disruption of the industry by COVID. And we need to appreciate the disruption that COVID has caused to be able to embark on the new changes that we have to embark on to sustain the industry going forward. And I think that is what I can share with our colleagues and those who are listening in. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kwache, for the overview of mine. I'm sure there will be questions coming later to see whether conferences will come up again. But before we go to Benedict, I'd like to ask Judy, because she needs to run off to another meeting shortly, to tell us about her chapter towards the end, which is on the Maasai. So pastoral women participation in community conservancies. What do we know about the role of, So floor is yours, Judy.
Thank you, Emmanuel. I will say something in a minute about the paper that my colleague Lucy and I wrote about pastoral women participation in community conservancies in Kenya, the case of Masai Mara. I think there are two important things that we wanted to highlight in this study or came out of this study. We all know that community conservancies are inclusive models. They are models for including communities in conservation. At least that is how they are designed. But what we found out from our study is that strategies for including communities in tourism are not necessarily strategies for women inclusion in conservation. We found out from this study that there is a misconception around communities. There is a tendency to ignore sub-communities within broader communities. And the sub-communities include women, sometimes youth, other times it's people with disabilities, or any other communities of interest that are within communities. So some of the key learnings from our paper that we would like to share is that to unlock growth in tourism in Kenya, because there is a great direct link between tourism and conservation in Kenya, there is need for a broader participation of sub-interest groups in different communities. And so this study is just an example, but we also know that within the broader tourism industry, there are sub-communities that are not always catered for in policies and other strategies that are employed for growth of tourism or for management of conservation. We also learned that we cannot build resilience without inclusion, because leaving a large segment of stakeholders weakens the sector, whether it is in conservation or whether we are talking about tourism. Now, how does this relate? How does this relate to our current situation with COVID-19 and the realities that we have seen in some conservation areas? If you look at the food relief programs that have happened in places like Masai Mara during this COVID period, especially in 2020, and some of it continuing in 2021, you will realize that it is women who are queuing up for that food aid. It is women who are queuing up for every other type of support, yet they are part of communities that are part of the conservancies. The relief program that came to conservation was targeted at rangers. Women are marginally represented in the population of rangers in this country, yet women are a large, are an important component of land management in Kenya. So if we do not break down our communities, there is a great chance that important contributors and stakeholders in conservation and tourism, like women, will always be left out by lumping them into this one group called communities. Thank you, Emmanuel. I will leave it here for now. I've got to leave.
Yeah, thank you, Judy. I think Benedict can kind of pick up from there about her contribution of A Diary of a Woman in Tourism to tell us a bit more about what's happening in Cote d'Ivoire.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. In fact, it's really a diary of being a servant leadership in community tourism and sustainable tourism in Cote d'Ivoire. It's a country that has picked up on tourism very recently in the past 5 years, and sustainable tourism is also growing, and communities have to be involved. So it's a journey on how we bring community in tourism, how we teach them how to be part of the tourism business and how to do it good, and how to especially be sustainable. So even in pre-COVID time, it's the way we were organizing the tour with the community we work with were really pretty much based on the concept of sustainable tourism. So COVID is a kind of confirmation on that our group should be small. We should also have more practices that are toward the community and toward the environment. So COVID was for us also a kind of justification that this was the right tourism we were doing, because Cote d'Ivoire is kind of also going in terms of tourism towards a more, I would say, if I might use the term, a more heavy tourism. So it's also a journey on how the community are struggling to get in tourism, because there is also the big the big enterprise in tourism in Cote d'Ivoire. So it's kind of this balance on how you actually focus in tourism in a country that don't know much about tourism, and how you have to make it survive in a positive way.
Okay, Thank you very much, Benedict, for the summary on your paper and the challenges of community-based tourism development in Cote d'Ivoire. And from West Africa, we'd like to move back to North Africa and to hear about Egypt. It's Doa, if you can, yeah.
Hello, good morning.
Morning.
Thank you for inviting me for the contribution of, to the book. My chapter was about the evolution of tourism in Egypt. So the title was Tourism in Egypt, the Past and the Present. And I was looking at the evolution of tourism since the 19th century. One of the problems I recognized is the different perspectives of the evolution of tourism from the Egyptian side, and for example from all the books and the papers that are written by Egyptian scholars or historians, and from, for example, the articles and English books. And I think there's something to do with colonization. I mean, it's the idea of the contributions, or how, I mean, things got better over time. Was it, I mean, done by, I mean, it's the idea of why were things done? Was it related to, I mean, colonization, or was it done by, I mean, the Egyptians? I also talked about the different types of tourism, and over time we can see that cultural tourism has remained the same, and I think it will remain the same. I mean, it still is very important, and it's the type of tourism that most people come to. Of course, I mean, given the fact that we have the beach tourism, I mean, the sun and the sand, this is also very important, but still cultural tourism is the highest one. I think I'm not going to go, I mean, in a lot of details. I know that I'm supposed to stick to 1 minute, but in relation to COVID-19, I think I'm quite optimistic. I know that it has hindered the opening of the big Egyptian museum, and this museum was supposed to be open in 2020. They have said that they are going to open it in 2021, but I mean, because of COVID-19, they have not determined a specific date that they're going to open it. I think this is going to be a massive event that will take place. I mean, in North Africa in general. I mean, regarding tourism, and I think this is even going to improve. I mean, the picture of, or I mean, the image of Egyptian tourism. I am, because I've made a lot of research in crisis. I believe that I mean, Egypt, whether it's a political crisis or environmental crisis, it always comes back very quickly. So I think that although COVID-19 is a big concern and there's a lot of losses in the tourism sector, but I'm quite optimistic that as soon as, I mean, the vaccinations are, I mean, are on a wider scale, and tourism is back, I think Egypt is going to also come back very, very strongly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Indeed, Egypt is the fine example of how to survive a crisis, no matter what comes. So we'll see and learn from how Egypt markets itself. And now I'd like to invite the authors for Ethiopia. So we'll move from the north to the east a bit, and to hear about Ethiopia and how rock art tourism can be a means of development. So, Agna.
Yes.
All the way from
Emmanuel, can you listen? Can you listen to me?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm Dagna Chaulata from the Open University of Hong Kong. My research is about rock art tourism and in Ethiopia and cultural heritage management challenge. Basically, starting from the point, like Ethiopia is located in the northeastern Africa, which is an ancient country in terms of history, religion, and culture. Compared to the neighborhood countries like Kenya and Tanzania, Ethiopia's tourism competitive advantage is more on cultural tourism, especially history, archaeology, and religious sites. So that's why I focus on the cultural heritage management challenge in Ethiopia. And that is one of the focus of the chapter. And second focus is about also rock art tourism, which is one of the potential resources in Ethiopia. And the main idea of this chapter is about challenges which affects those potential tourism resources. So basically, tourism is a very growing phenomenon sector in Ethiopia. From time to time, the country's economic contribution of tourism is growing, but at the same time, there are lots of cultural destruction in and around cultural destinations. So one of the things is that like there is fast development in terms of economy, investment, trade, and then at the same time, high concentration focus on the economic benefits, and then that neglect cultural tourism, especially conservation efforts. So the chapter focuses on there is a development in terms of economy, so that neglects cultural heritage. For example, the UNESCO World Heritage Sites in Ethiopia, most of them are affected by unplanned visiting schedules. And at the same time, there is also degradation of resources, the buildings, and then conservation efforts are not that much effective. Of course, the benefits of tourism is encouraged, but at the same time, there is a challenge in terms of losing those attractions. And second focus of the chapter is about rock art tourism. As you know, there are like lots of research carried out regarding rock art resources, especially in the South Africa, but less is known about rock art tourism resources in East Africa, especially in Ethiopia. But Ethiopia has like full of rock art resources, which is found in the cave, the boulders, stones. So, but the thing is like this tourism resources are almost neglected. So this chapter underscores those potentials in the rock art tourism. Why I want to focus on these resources is that like first there are a very huge concentration of these rock art resources, but compared to like archaeological sites, compared to religious sites, these resources are almost neglected. So it's better to underline the potential of these resources for tourism development. So all in all is this the focus of the chapter, and in the conclusion, I underscore about like one thing is good to focus on economic contribution of tourism, but at the same time, the sustainability of cultural resources is also very important for the future tourism development. This is what is the focus of the chapter, Emmanuel. If there is any question, I'm glad to answer.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. And yeah, as you ended, it speaks to a larger issue about heritage and cultural heritage tourism resources across the continent, and what's to be done about those other places. There is a chapter that we don't touched on in the beginning that gives an overview of heritage tourism across the continent and some of the issues that comes with it in terms of different levels of accreditation. But last but certainly not the least, authors who are available to us now. We're excited to hear about Mozambique because much of what is known is in Portuguese, but now we have an English chapter that we can learn from. So I'd like to invite the authors to tell us about what their chapter is about and what's going on in Mozambique. So.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Greetings to everyone. On behalf of co-authors, Professora Zélia Breda and Professora Celeste Eusébio and myself, we would like to thank you for this opportunity and outline our chapter entitled Tourism in Mozambique, Historical Evolution and Future Challenge. We start the chapter to briefly describe the country highlighting the natural and socio-cultural resources for tourism activity development, describing the tourism historical evolution as well as its current situation in order to support the discussion of challenges regarding to destination image, for example, and other factors such as political instability and social issues that might lead to the current level of countries' competitiveness as tourism destination. We close the chapter with some lessons for the future development of tourism in Mozambique regarding to safety and security, tourism performance, and recovery marketing. And we hope you enjoy reading the chapter, and we look forward to receive your feedback. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mariamo. And yeah, we've actually kept to good time. So yeah, these are some of, well, these are a few flavors of the chapters that are covered in the book. There are a number of other chapters. As we said, there are 30 chapters in the book, plus 10 info course sections that are written by practitioners that really gives a taste of not only academic writing and topics, but also what is really happening on the ground in terms of practitioner perspectives. We're now going to the next section of Q&A. So those on YouTube, if you have any questions, it can be based on what the authors have said, but general questions in relation to the topics we've discussed and issues about tourism in Africa and COVID and all, please put them in the chat. And I'll invite my colleague and co-editor Manuel to take over from me, so he leads this section of Q&A. And yeah, we'll also like to ask the authors to perhaps now we go into gallery view so that people can respond to that. So, Manuel.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Alecto Ribeiro from Cape Verde, and I'm responsible for the section Q&A. If you have any question, please just let me know. You can ask directly or you can write in the chat and we can try to address those questions. After this Q&A, I will briefly make a concluding remarks from this book, and also talk a little bit about some research venues for future research in tourism in Africa. So if you have some question, please. Any question?
There is a question about the future of my
Yes.
continental level on YouTube. I'm just picking this up. There is Malaise Bebe asking, curious to hear the contributors' view on the future of mice in the continent, given the live COVID-19 lesson, I suppose. COVID-19 has taught us online contact and the debate on flying due to climate change. What do you think is the future?
Yeah, I think relate to the question relate to mice. Maybe I wouldn't invite our colleague to Kwaki Donkor to answer this question about the future of mice in the African continent. Kwaki, it seems that he lost his connection.
Oh, no, he's here.
I think his connection is not good at the moment. So we can move to the question relates to climate change.
Yes, what was the question again? Emmanuel?
We have a question here from YouTube about one about mice, another one about debate of flying due to climate change. So, given the COVID-19 has taught us online contact, and what's the debate about flying again to attend due to climate change, to attend events in Africa? This is not only for African continent. I think this is a general question from any corner in the world. If do we still need to travel to attend conference, for example, or any other events? It can be as we are doing this online right now. So, what's your take on this?
Yes, there has been a debate already on the contribution of tourism to climate change because of the emissions that come from long-haul flights. So the debate has been there for quite some time that maybe the tourism sector should also be cutting off from their contribution to climate change. Yes, now with COVID as well, that is being emphasized. So it boils back to the technology, the ICT that we have already. If we can be able to hold conferences online, however, that may be a challenge maybe for Africa, where our bandwidth and the rate at which the technology is going may not be at par with the developed world. So these are some of the things that we can look at when we're talking development and sustainable development. How do we assist the developing world to catch up in terms of ICT so that some of these things can seamlessly take place online? Yeah, so there are some also in terms of tourism. You know, tourism is about it's interaction with nature in some instances. So there are instances where virtual tourism has also been talked about. So I don't know whether anybody from the panel would like to contribute to that, but there's talk around that there can be some virtual sightseeing that can take place. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your answer.
If I may add to that, because obviously Kwachi could not answer, but I've been obviously in conversation with Kwachi for quite a long time, particularly as he was involved in, and please Kwachi, if you're back, interrupt me. He was actually the leader in championing the way of hosting a major MICE event in Rwanda. Just before the summer, and of course the challenges that he had was obviously both in terms of the ongoing COVID induced crisis, and therefore the issue of security and safety for conference conveners, together with the issue and the ongoing debate about climate change and how do we deal with the thing. So I think the thing is twofold here, and they go together. At the moment, from the experience we had with the Africa Tourism Leadership Forum, the experience was that the hybrid mode that was obviously tested there gave us some really good example of how the current situation is giving us the opportunity to explore alternative ways to host international events such as big industry forum. But there are two things that we need to bear in mind, and this is one of the ongoing debate when I discuss issues of climate change with my colleague, which are very much pro-staycation and no international travel. The balance needs to be struck. Of course, we all want to work towards a better future for tourism, and of course, finding technological ways in which our contribution as a sector to climate change is obviously managed, reduced, and obviously possibly brought to zero carbon footprint. But the reality is that you know, I go back to my tourism 101 lectures with my students, and is about striking that balance where we actually, in a way, trying to make sure that we do not act in a way that is at the disadvantage of a sector that we've promoted as being the panacea for tourism. Tourism as the panacea for development in a continent like Africa. You know, I have an ongoing joke that I've used in the last few years, where I'm not going to be the one swimming all the way to the African continent telling them that we are not coming for holiday anymore, which again is a very simplistic joke to make, but the reality is that we need to find cohesive decision, whether for the MICE sector or any other segment of the tourism sector in a continent like the African one, where we must obviously work together to find those technological measures and solutions. The same that we're actually trying to work out to operate in a COVID crisis scenario. I hope this helps. I've just had a message from Kwachi. He's having problems with his internet connection, and he will try to join us back in as soon as possible.
He's joined now, so if it works. And also Tony, I forgot. So Tony Okachuku wrote on African Aviators Academy, and I think it will be interesting to see his perspective on training aviators and flying and the issues that comes with climate change and tourism in Africa. So yeah, between Kwache and Tony, the one whose network works best.
Okay, can you hear me now, Manuel?
Yes.
Yes.
Right, sorry for that, unfortunately, technology. Okay, the question was if I may rephrase, was the state of the mines industry going forward. Am I right?
Yes, the future of mice industry in Africa.
Right. I think it still has a very bright future in spite of COVID. And what needs to happen now is to make it domestic led, and a couple of areas we can look into as far as the going forward is concerned, the industry moving forward. We believe that every single MICE stakeholder must ensure that they stick to the adherence, they stick to the protocols that are currently in place, and that's going to be part of life. So there is still a future, because in-person conferences will never stop. It will never, the virtual conferences will never replace the in-person conferencing. So you got a future. However, the modalities and the way that the industry operates need to change. And one of them is ensuring, as I said, to the protocols. The second important point is we have to now start evolving and understanding and accepting that the hybrid format of conferencing is still going to be critical going forward in growing the industry. Although the numbers physical in the short term is going to be small, but in the future, now that the vaccine is in place and we are all getting used to how to manage and understanding the environment, when hopefully COVID disappears, the industry will definitely bounce back, because it's a key driver of most African economies. And to go forward, go into the future, whether we like it or not, digitalization and flexibility need to be embedded in all strategies that drive the MICE sectors. Whether you are a conference organizer, you are an incentive planner, or you're a conference or convention bureau, the teams within each and every country need to work together to ensure that these factors or these requirements are in place to drive the economy. And one important point that we can also currently use, in spite of the current situation that we all find ourselves in, is what we call the multi-location events, where one could run one event, but having different people in different countries or destinations in smaller numbers as required by the COVID requirements to be able to run a big event. I think ICA did that recently, and it was one of the most successful ones. We had our Africa Tourism Leadership Forum in Rwanda having a hybrid format, and it worked very well. The economic impact will not be the same, but one big impact is the brand equity that will be built for destination organizers of events. So in short, I believe that the MICE has a bright future, and COVID will definitely not kill it. It will have issues, it will have challenges, structural, permanent, and temporary issues, but we believe that the industry will bounce back. Thank you.
Okay, and not to interrupt Manuel, but Tony is now here, and just to go back to the other session. Well, if Tony, well, I think he's gone offline now, but he has a chapter in focus on Aviators Africa Academy, and I wanted him to speak to that, but he's gone offline now. So perhaps when he comes back, Elsie.
Yeah.
Thank you. No, I just wanted to echo a little bit what Marina and Kwachi had also said, because not all is doom and gloom. Obviously, travel is a sector that we will continuously see it moving forward. It will be on the rebound. It will take time, but I think what is important here is that we have to also take into account all the various issues that connects the dots together, whereby new technologies are coming on board to help us to be able to manage the way forward. And there is a saying that says, if you're out of sight is out of mind. And I believe this is why most of the tourism boards, most of the destinations has recently, at the outset of the pandemic, they have moved virtually to offer virtual tours, to offer virtual meetings, still showing the attributes of the destinations, remaining at the top of minds of people. And that is why we also launch this media campaign with CNN to say, stay home and travel tomorrow. We keep engaging with the consumers on a virtual manner, so that when it's safe and it's able for them to travel, that they will still be able to have something to look forward to. But definitely, we've seen a lot of opportunities also that comes out of these hybrid webinars, whereby being either on the ground or being able to connect also has its benefits. So I just wanted to reiterate that, yes, the industry will still very much continue, but we will have to take into account and do things in a more sustainable manner. But I would allow Tony to complement and focus more on the travel side of things. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if anyone will continue this conversation about the topic we're talking.
I wanted Tony to speak about his chapter.
Yeah, Tony is on now.
Your
Please.
mic is off, Tony.
Thank you, Manuel. Sorry, when you mentioned my name earlier, I had a glitch, so I had to set up my mic. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, and I greet everyone from Nigeria. So I just want to talk from the travel aviation part of things. Yes, I contributed to the book, which I really appreciate the opportunity. So I set up Aviators Africa Academy for the next generation of aviators because career building and capacity development is very important for the sector. If I might just add a little bit to what Kwashe said about, COVID leaving, I want to dare say that COVID might not leave. What will happen eventually was that we'll have some kind of COVID certificate, just like you have like the yellow fever certificate, which will help you secure that you've been vaccinated or you have the clearance to travel, and that will live with us because COVID is here to stay for a little while longer. So we have to look for ways to navigate around making travel return back sooner. However, certificate in that area will be something that people will look out for to make sure that you're free of COVID and you're able to travel. Staying home and traveling, just like Elsia said, the vaccine certificate is what will make travel come back quicker when people now begin to have the confidence to travel, because there is some technology and innovations around it to improve, traveling to do face-to-face meetings and engagement, which, as a matter of fact, will not stop, because if we say people should stay home and travel later, talking about the aviation business, flights take off and land every day, 24/7. And you have crew and personnel that make this happen. Are they free from COVID? So movement will still happen. However, technologies and innovations around this is what we'll now have to look into. I dare say also that the aircraft is one of the safest place to be when traveling, because the aircraft is equipped with high efficiency particulate air, which filters air every 2 to 3 minutes in the aircraft, and makes the virus of little or no effect because the air is filtered. So these are part of things that we encourage travel and encourage people to have the confidence. However, our airports are what should be looked into, because they don't have this kind of features and they are crowded environments. So these are areas on ground. Of course, they do the social distancing thing on ground, because people often wonder, why do social distancing on ground and get into the aircraft and everybody's cramped up? It's a different scenario altogether. So I just wanted to add this piece and share my thoughts more as the Zoom meeting continues.
Thank you, Tony. We have a question from Professor Brian King from the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. He's asking, he's saying that in Asia, they have quite developed academic tourism network, like, for example, the Association of Pacific Tourism, the Association of the Pacific Asian Travel Association, the Association of Pacific Tourism Agencies, and a chapter on Tourism Association of the Council of Hotel, Restaurant, Institutional Education. He's asking about any thought about future development in Africa's college network.
I can
Marina,
answer that. Yeah,
okay.
I can answer that question. As I said in the beginning of in the opening remarks of this event, there is one scholarly network which has been very strongly engaged over the past 20 years, and that is the Atlas Africa Network. After the European chapter of Atlas, obviously Africa has been certainly the strongest and the most successful one over the past 20 years. And I'm not saying this because Atlas is obviously one of our hosts, but is the reality of fact that the vast majority of the people engaged internationally, both in terms of publishing and also in terms of organizing events, which have been attended by probably an average of 100 participants every 2 years, because their event take place every 2 years normally, has been one of the most successful one. And actually, Leontine from Atlas could voice for that. It appeared that over the past few years, the Africa chapter has been the most successful one, in fact. And both Emmanuel and myself have been very active in promoting the organization, not necessarily only for marketing mere purposes, but actually this book is the result, in a way, of that networking that has seen many of the Atlas members actually contributing to this collection. So I think all in all, as an answer to Brian's question, there are, of course, existing networks which are growing, and our ambition is to make sure that we work with what we've got, but also in collaboration with UNWTO, for instance, the Academy of UNWTO, to make this a forward-looking strategic partnership between industry and academia.
Yeah, and if I may add, actually, because I think the example that Brian gave, they've been long going, and in a way, it's somehow easier to organize conferences and get people to come in Asia. And that links to our issue, which is covered in the chapter about air liberalization and transport within Africa. So even though Atlas Africa as an academic network has been going on for a long time, most of these conferences have been in Eastern and Southern Africa because they have easier movement. So what has been one of the key challenges in developing like an Africa-wide academic network on tourism has been the fact that it's difficult to travel intercontinentally, well, difficult, expensive, because there are not enough open sky policies between countries. So if you want to go from Ghana to Senegal, for example, you might have to go to Paris. It's cheaper to go to Paris and fly down to Senegal than to go from Ghana to Senegal because of these issues. So that has been one of the kind of blocks to developing the sector. But as Marina said, we're hoping that we can get this groundswell to move forward, because it's important to have a strong academic network so that we can, based on the continent and working on the continent, so that we can develop further also with industry.
Yeah, thank you, Manuel. I don't know, we are running out of our time. I don't know if you have more questions.
I cannot see any more questions, yes, Lecter, on YouTube, and I'm checking on the other version, but I think we are pretty much done, particularly because people need to move to other meetings. So if you want to make your closing remarks, we can probably close the session.
Yeah, I'll take a few minutes to, maybe 2 minutes to talk about just the concluding remarks of this wonderful project that we embraced almost. I think the first time, Marina, we talk about this book was one Emmanuel organized a conference in Sheffield. This was 4 years ago, in 2016. But we have been working on this in the last 3 years. It takes some time, and this is I think this is a wonderful project. This book is a result of a nice collaboration with African scholars. So I think this handbook examines the importance of tourism as a historical, economic, social, environmental, and political forces in African continent. Through all the chapters, it highlights the ecological, and some challenges relate to some important topics. For example, we discussed here, and also in the book, some topics relate to climate change, ICT in tourism and innovation, cultural heritage preservation, wildlife conservation, gender, community-based tourism, political economy, the problem with mobility within the African continent, etc. So, and it provides an in-depth analysis of also by the regions, the geopolitical conditions that have long determined the patterns of tourism demand and supply throughout the African continent, and how this plays out in everyday lives of African residents and different African destinations. So while cultural heritage and maybe wildlife conservation remains the primary tourism aspect within the continent, and maybe those aspects that are more researched in tourism. So despite this growing interest in African tourism and the challenge that tourism and research faces in Africa for several reasons, tourism research in the continent lags largely behind those on industrialized and more developed economies. So scholars from Africa or around the world have already expressed the concern over such concentration of scholarship and research in developing economies. So tourism in general is highly concentrated in developing the world. We agree on this. And while the voices of developing nations are quite marginalized. So this is again a highlight the importance of this book for tourism research within the continent and by African scholars. So these patterns provide some indication of underlying power dimensions in the production of tourism knowledge. So my colleague, Professor John Tribe, used to say that, use the term Eurocentric knowledge to describe such geographical imbalance in knowledge production. So this handbook is the first of its kind to examine tourism from a continental and inclusive perspective, surveying this broad range of topics we discuss in the book and also here today. So with a wider range of contributors, almost all of us are African natives. This handbook is an important resource for students and scholars interested in tourism, African studies, development studies, geographies, conservation, etc. So the topics discussed in this book open avenues and springboards, as Elsie said, for future research. I would just briefly mention some topics that we discuss in the book, but also offer some avenues for future research in Africa. I think the first one is climate change, the challenge the continent is facing with climate change. So future research developed in the continent to better understand from Africa perspective the contribution of tourism to mitigate the effects of climate change in several African destinations. Another topic that also maybe needs some more research from the Africa perspective is the sustainable tourism and how tourism contributes for the sustainable development goals. Cultural heritage preservation was also discussed in this book, but we need more research, more research from Africa, where we can more research that contributes to the understanding of the relationship between tourism and how tourism can help to better understand the legacy of African tangible and intangible heritage, and how tourism can help in the preservation of sustainability of the African heritage. So wildlife and biodiversity conservation as well, some more research that contribute to understanding of the relationship between tourism and biodiversity, and assess the way that tourism can contribute to the protection of the biodiversity and enhance its role as a main resource for some African tourism destinations. Innovation and ICT as well, how innovation and technology we're seeing during this pandemic, how the importance of technology and how this can help tourism destinations to be more competitive and use the digital transformation to take more benefits, this digital transformation, and make this destination more competitive. So more research also is needed in this area. So gender inequality, I think Judy and Benedict talk quite brilliantly about the whole of gender, especially women in tourism in Africa. We need more research in this area. So this book is an avenue for all these topics that we need to consider for future, and how we can provide more recommendations and implication for the inclusions of women, for the inclusion and empowerment of women within tourism industry. Last but not least is the political side of tourism policy and planning, how government can use research developed by academics in Africa to design much better strategy to attract tourism, and that benefit the host community, and also to help to design more to design strategies and more efficient policies that help the several destinations within the continents to be more sustainable, and also that take more benefits from tourism. I stop here. I think our time, we are 10 minutes behind our time, so I stop here. I just want to thank you all, especially Marina and Emmanuel, my colleagues in this long journey, and all the contributors for your contribution to make this book a reality. Now I pass to Marina and Emmanuel, if they can say a few words and a goodbye to everyone.
Yeah, so just a reminder, so the book, there is a reduction on the price. So if you go to Routledge's webpage, it's the hardback, hopefully paperback will come out soon, but the hardback now goes for £152, a bit high, but the work that is in here is invaluable, but also you can get the ebook copy for just £31.99 also on the website. And I've put the link in the YouTube chat, and when this goes on YouTube, it will be in the description as well, where you can get access to that. And there is a last question on YouTube that I'll quickly respond to and say, yes, we talk about mobility issues. So the first chapter or the second chapter in the book is about actually intra-Africa travel as well, because we know that there is a lot of travel, especially in Southern Africa. So Africa is not just a destination that people go to, but there is a lot of tourist travel also around the continent. And indeed, that's one area that we need to look at to really determine kind of business travel within Africa and cross-border journeys and mobilities across the continent. Thank you. And Marina will finish us off.
Yeah, I'm going to be extremely brief because I'm aware of the time. As I just posted on my Facebook page, a heartfelt thank you to all the that contributed both to the book and these events and attended. And of course, we are physically immobile due to COVID, but never be so connected for a common mission, which is actually to make African tourism as great as it deserves to be. And on that note, I would like to say, I look forward to collaborate again with you and anybody who just joined us, and hopefully to meet in person somewhere in Africa as soon as possible. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.